Hi all, for our notable game today let's have a look at Nakamura again in round 5 of the Millionaire Chess Open at Las Vegas. Okay, so in round 5 Nakamura was playing black against Andrey Stukopin, a Russian Grandmaster, quite a new one, 21-year-old Russian Grandmaster, who also, by the way, plays for New Jersey in the United States Chess League. So, dangerous opponents, 2-5-8-7. Let's see what happened. Nakamura is 2-8-1-4 right now. So, e4. Nakamura chose actually the French defense, which makes the game slightly curious. You might think a tactical player like Nakamura playing the French defense, is that a stylistic fit? Let's see. d4, d5, knight c3, and now knight f6, inviting white to close the center. But white plays bishop g5, which is actually the most popular move. It's more popular, in fact, in live book than e5 by about 2,000 games. There's about 9,000 games with bishop g5. That's the main move. e5 is approaching 7,000. So bishop g5, and usually black plays d takes e4 here. About 4,000 games with that. But bishop b4 is also very popular. e5, h6. And here, usually players with white actually play bishop d2. This is like the main move by far, bishop d2. Also, another popular one is bishop e3. As an idea, I mean, let's see an example. Black would take knight e4, queen g4, hitting g7. The absence of that bishop. This is a common continuation, and it's thought to be about equal. This is a very common continuation. So the game actually goes off the rails actually here quite rapidly because this bishop h4 is played, and it's quite provocative actually. The bishop can be kicked around now. g5 is played, knight e4, and not only threatening c3 but also that might be useful at some point. White supports both g3 and c3 with that move. There has been a few games here, 28 games with c5, but actually Nakamura tries to exploit this bishop on g3. He plays h5, so h4 is the threat to try and trap that bishop. White makes some space and kicks the knight. Knight takes g3, h takes g3. So it's quite a curious looking French defense position here. Has black got exploitable weaknesses? It looks as though white's pretty congested at the moment. This bishop's hemmed in. The center seems a little bit potentially fragile actually with that pawn there, and undermining with c5 would seem sometimes more effective than usual. Black is not in a rush to play c5, perhaps then a3 would be the response. Black actually plays bishop d7 here. Nakamura plays bishop d7. Now after queen d2, bishop e7, bishop just coming to support the g5 pawn. So we have g4, and now h4. So you can see that potential c5, there isn't the usual structure. There's only these two pawns without the f4 one. Is that a little bit more fragile, the center? We have g3, white's trying to blast through the h file, but now c5. And it seems very natural to play moves like knight c6 after, of course. G takes h4. Now here, Nakamura doesn't take the time to recapture the pawn. This center does seem quite fragile. He just hits the center harder with knight c6. White, for the moment, reinforces the center with queen e3. And now the other move to put pressure on this center, queen b8. But not only that, potentially b5 is supported. So it might have an advantage over queen c7, as well as not inviting knight b5s. So here, it seems c takes will wreck white's center because the e5 pawn will drop after. White kind of accepts this now. If he does try and play f4, then perhaps the point of not taking on h4 is revealed. Black can like take here and then take here, check. So white just castles queenside And the center collapses a bit. C takes, knight takes. And here queen takes e5. The queen's come off. And black seems to have done well out of the opening so far. Black's center pawns seem quite good. We have now the threat of taking this pawn. White parries that h5, keeping a protected pass pawn. How valuable is this protected pass pawn here? a6, keeping pieces out of b5 and maybe supporting b5 in the future. Bishop d3, bishop c5, knight ce2, and now actually Nakamura castles queenside. If he can just nudge his king, maybe he'll put a rook on c8 later. c3, but there's another idea now. Rook dg8, a mysterious rook move, you might think. Well, actually it seems in a way more to the point than a c-file operation, because potentially white is going to play f4, so it really discourages anything like that. For the moment there'll be pressure on g4, so it's prophylaxis potentially against f4. We have bishop c2, rook h6, an interesting move, trying to target f3 by playing like this. So f3 is becoming a target. Rook he1, rook f6. Curious. It is a backward pawn, but usually with a backward pawn it's often easier to exploit. You wouldn't say black didn't have a pawn there, it would be more obvious. So black's kind of put his rook in an artificial looking place here on f6. We have knight g1, but it seems quite nifty, quite justified. Knight c6, and now black is looking really good here with this pressure. White is reduced to a passive looking move. Rook f1, king c7, king b1, knight e5, going back. Now maybe knight c4 to e3 could be seen as a threat. White doesn't bother playing b3 here. White plays a4. Maybe it's not such a big deal. Knight c4, maybe a rook just moves. King d8, but now b3. Maybe prompted by king d8, as though maybe c4 at the right time. King e7, the king is safer now on e7 though. Knight ge2. So how does Nakamura increase the pressure here on f3? It seems white's pretty solid and has got a protected pass pawn. Isn't it about equal? Black now plays b5. Okay, white now reacts with b4 and now a forcing move. Bishop takes d4, knight takes d4, and Nakamura takes this pawn, because it's not just taking the pawn, it's actually opening up the b5 square. Rook de1, and here the king comes to protect the knight. Very important. The king comes to protect, and this leaves black with a great position now. It wasn't just winning the pawn, it's that b5 square, and in fact after king b2, bishop b5 is actually quite a cruel, tactical, crushing move in this position. White actually felt his position was so bad he had to resign. It's looking pretty bad with things like knight c4 on the cards as well. Let's have a look at this final position. Why did white resign? On king f2, let's rule that out. Knight takes g4 is just a way of losing a pawn with a miserable position. Rook h1, black can just take on f3, and this is pretty good. So takes. This passed pawn is not really of great significance. Black is getting some pressure here. Let's say this. There's also a3. This is pretty nasty. Yeah, this pawn's not really going anywhere at the moment. If it's pushed just a hair, and black's just better. White's losing lots of pawns. So yeah, after bishop b5, what sort of choices are there? Rook h1, basically the same thing, just snap off this pawn. If white plays knight takes b5, a takes, then how to protect this pawn? If bishop d1, then there's knight d3. Check. Yeah, so the pawn's dropping off. Rook c1. Here, actually, taking the pawn is no good because of bishop d1. In this case, well, not like that. If rook takes, again, this is no good actually. Well, no, this is actually, pardon me, not no good. This is okay for black. Rook takes f3. This is the safe way to play it, to win that pawn. Rook takes f3. But there might actually be even stronger. Knight c4 check. Where does the king go? Knight e3. I'd take like that. Even stronger. Yeah, it's a crushing position here. Yeah, knight takes b5 doesn't really help white's cause. So yeah, it seems as though it was like a cozy kind of French defense in a way. It seems black didn't have any particular king safety issues or any major tactical issues. He allowed a protected passed pawn, which wasn't of great significance for the middle game. And in fact, it seems white's f3 pawn became a major target. I think something for white went wrong around the b5 point. Maybe white had better around there. Yeah, it seems the disaster happened soon after allowing b takes a4, giving black that key b5 square, which helped black's overall strategy of putting pressure on f3, that base of that pawn chain. Okay, an interesting game there from round 5. Nakamura making it look a little bit easy sometimes against near 2,600 opponents. Okay, comments or questions on YouTube? Thanks very much.